Welcome back to the Friday 5 for Friday, May 19th, 2023. My name is Andrew Ayers. I'm an estate planning and business law attorney with offices in Edina, Minnesota and New York City. We're going to look at 5 questions from the week, 5 things that came up in consultations and meetings with clients, just 5 quick questions that maybe you've wondered about in the past as well. So let's start out with question number 1 this week. What if I don't want to grant all of the powers in the power of attorney? So when you're dealing with a power of attorney form, oftentimes it's really pretty filled in for you. So it's going to have a list of all the different powers that you can grant. And usually it'll say A through H or A through M or A through Z. And there'll be a catch-all at the bottom where you can say, I'm just going to grant all of these powers to my power of attorney. However, many people will be a little concerned about granting all of those powers to somebody. And their concern is, do I really have to do them all? Is the option that either I do them all or I can't sign a power of attorney? And the good news for you is you don't have to grant all of the powers. You can choose what powers you want to grant. And in fact, many times what's happening with the power of attorney is that it's being granted for one particular purpose. Let's say you're buying property in another state and you can't be there for the closing. You may grant a power of attorney to somebody to be able to do that transaction for you, to sign on your behalf. And the power of attorney is limited just to that transaction, and it may be limited in the scope of time too, meaning it's only good until July 31st, let's say, if you're going to close in July. So you do not have to give your power of attorney, your attorney, in fact, all of the powers that are listed in the power of attorney. Question 2 this week, can I give a power of attorney to more than one person? So you probably guessed this came from the same consultation. And the question was, do I have to choose just one person? So in this case, the client has 2 children and the client would like both of them to be the power of attorney. So you can do it this way, and you can grant multiple people the power to act on your behalf. The question is going to be, how is that going to work? Is it going to be they both have to agree, or just one of them can act on their own and that binds you to whatever their decision is? If you have 4 or 5 people, does it have to be all of them agreeing, a majority of people agreeing, maybe just some of them agreeing? So you can appoint more than one agent, but it's important to remember that you need to figure out how that's going to work, what kind of decisions can be made with everybody involved, and what kind of decisions can be made with only one person involved. As a flip side to this, what many of my clients will do then is appoint one child as the primary power of attorney and then have the second child be the successor power of attorney in case the original power of attorney is unable to act or unwilling to act. That way you get around the issue of having to have them both agree. You have one point person who is the power of attorney for you for making these decisions. Question 3 this week, does an agreement need to be notarized? So this is going to depend upon what the agreement is that you're signing and whether it needs to be notarized. So many times when you have documents that are being submitted to a court, or if you're doing real estate transactions, or if you're doing an estate plan, these documents do need to be notarized. However, you're going to find there's a lot of other agreements in this world, a lot of other contracts you sign that don't actually require notaries anymore. And with the use of online signature forms, whether it's DocuSign, whether it's Adobe, whether it's some other service, it's giving you essentially a trail of when the document was signed and what was going on. And so you don't always need that notary to show that it's an authentic signature. So you may or may not need to have your document notarized. You have to remember, though, that notarizing a document doesn't actually automatically make it a legal document. So, for example, when people ask me to notarize a document, they think that I, as an attorney, are now signing off on this document in some way. Remember that the notary's job is to say that the person who signed this document at this time on this date is the person who is signing. So it's more of an identification than it is an endorsement that it's a legal document. So it's really tied to the signature, not saying that this is the right contract or this contract is enforceable. It's simply saying that this person signed the contract on this date. Question number 4 this week, should I sign a contract before I review it with an attorney? Now, in this case, my client unfortunately had signed a contract a few years ago, and as we were meeting to discuss it and going through the terms, we were seeing some of the headaches that he's run into over the years. The contract is not particularly in his favor. There's actually a pretty significant non-compete clause that he's concerned about that we're not sure would be enforceable or not. And so, the fun part of our conversation, or the joke that we had with all this, was, should I have even signed this in the first place without an attorney? And my answer, of course, being an attorney, was no. If you are concerned about what's in a contract, if you're not sure what it says, if there's something that seems a little bit off to you, spend that time, spend a little money, meet with an attorney so that you understand what you're signing. Because a couple of years later, you can't go back to the other party and say, well, I really didn't know what I was signing at the time, so I really don't, I want to get out of our contract now, or I want to terminate it. Or maybe you've signed onto a contract that doesn't even allow it to be terminated. This is something that you would have looked into when you first negotiated and signed the contract, but you never did with an attorney, and now you may be stuck with it or stuck with a big legal bill to help you try to get out of it. So if you're presented with a contract and you're used to these contracts, let's say it's in your industry and you know just what to look for, you know where the terms are that you're concerned about, you can go ahead and sign that contract without an attorney if you'd like, because you're familiar with it, you understand it. But if this is something new to you, you've never seen a contract like this before, especially if you've seen a provision in that contract that you've never heard of and it seems very unfair, it's important that you work with an attorney to make sure you understand that document before you sign it. And then question number 5 this week, can I reinstate a dissolved company? You'd be surprised how often this comes up. A lot of times companies have been dissolved for reasons that people didn't necessarily even understand at the time. So it's pretty common that you'll have a client come to you with a company that's been dissolved because they failed to pay their taxes, failed to pay their filing fees. Maybe they were working with a registered agent company that forgot to send them the notices. Maybe they were working with an attorney in the past who wasn't keeping up on the filings for them. Whatever the reason is, if your company's been dissolved for failing to file with your state or failing to pay taxes, you can actually reinstate the company. You just need to make sure you understand the process. So depending upon what state you're in, what you'll normally have to do is pay back all the fees and anything that you should have paid going along the way. But if you owe taxes, you definitely have to pay the taxes that are owed for the company on their tax returns. And once you've got all that done, you usually get a certificate from the state or a letter or some kind of authorization from the state that allows you to reinstate the company. And once you do that, you need to remember to make your filings. So pay your taxes, make your annual filings if they're required, whatever it takes to keep that company going. However, what I ran into this week was a client whose parents had owned the company and it's been dissolved. And now the next step is we have to go back into the company records and figure out why was it dissolved, what happened, and can we reinstate it? We have to go to the particular state that he's in and figure out whether or not the state will actually allow him to reinstate the company or whether or not he's going to have to start a new company. In this case, there was an estate issue with it because both parents are now dead, and we have to sort out the estate planning implications of that, the probate implications as well, working with the probate court, which goes back to one of those common issues that I run into is make sure you're working with an attorney when you're dealing with your estate planning, especially if you have business interests. We want to make sure that we have a plan in place for what happens when you die. So that was our 5 questions from this week. The weather's finally warming up here in Minnesota. It was a busy week. You can see a lot of business questions this week. I think a lot of people are getting ready for the summer, and some others are coming and say, I'm getting ready for vacation. We have to make sure we get our estate plan in place. So there'll be a link in the description where you can check out future episodes. If you like this video, I would appreciate if you hit the like button, hit the thumbs up button, share it across social media. You can go to YouTube and actually subscribe for future episodes of the Friday 5. Apologies for missing last week. I was working out in New York. We had a trial that we had to work on all week, and I just wasn't in a place where I could get to the Friday 5 video. So and then next week will be a holiday weekend, but I'll still try to squeeze in a Friday 5 before we go. But for now, wherever you are, I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you next week.